Good day. Thank you for being in attendance. The Procurement Policy Board meeting will now come to order. My name is Guillermo Chacon, and I'm the chair of the Procurement Policy Board, known as PPB. Before we begin, I would like to welcome our new member, Molly Schaefer.
But
Schaefer. All
goodness.
right. Thank you, Molly. Apologies for my horrible pronunciation. Chief of Staff of the Office of the Chief Counsel to the Mayor. We're happy to see you, Molly, and welcome you. And we'll be replacing Mark. We wish Mark only the best on his new journey. I now ask each member of the Procurement Policy Board here at this time to please state his or her name for the record. Am I right?
Charlotte Amamjian, Deputy Controller from the Controller's Office.
Lovely. On my left.
Wayne Lambert, Director of Supply Diversity at Turner & Townsend.
Victor Olds, Controller's Office, PPB designee.
Thank you. Thank you, and I would like to invite the rest of the folks to join on my right.
Connor Redden, Agency Attorney, Mayor's Office of Contract Services.
Jessica Liu, Agency Attorney, Mayor's Office of Contract Services.
Kimberly Egbert, Project Manager, Mayor's Office of Contract Services.
I'm Carrie Nagorski, Policy Director at Controller's Office.
Daphne Adami, Director. Controller's Office.
Now we go to the virtual. Let's begin with Ray.
Ray Sanchez, General Counsel, Mayor's Office of Contract Services.
Nick Negron, Agency Attorney, Mayor's Office of Contract Services.
Nick, Ollie.
Hi, everyone. Calgary Haynes Troutman, Mayor's Office of Contract Services.
Okay. And then we have Molly over there. All right. Now I believe, thank you. In accordance with the open meeting law and the PPB administrative procedures, Molly is participating remotely and will now count towards the quorum, but she will still be able to vote on the agenda items if they're in-person quorum. We have, I believe, in-person quorum, correct?
Yes.
But we need to 3 members. All right. I now ask, thank you. The purpose of this meeting is to consider a variety of changes to the PPB rules. The first 3 items on the agenda are to vote on the adoption of various rule changes. These rule changes all went through the requirements of the Citywide Administrative Procedures Act, frequently referred as CAPA, C-A-P-A. These rules changes have been publicly noticed, providing the public opportunities to comment and testify at hearings. Public comments and recordings were made available to each member of the PPB prior to today's meeting. If the PPB approves the rules changes today, they will become effective 30 days after the publication of the notice of adoption. First, the PPB shall vote on changes to Section 2-08 of the PPB rules. Public hearing was held on June 16, 2025. I this time recognize Connor Redden, Agency Attorney for the Mayor's Office of Contract Services, to speak further on the rules on behalf of the administration. Connor?
Thank you, Chair. The opportunity to speak for the PPB about these reforms to Section 2-08 of the PPB rules. This rule change will codify current practices pursuant to which governmental and quasi-governmental bodies may be granted exemptions from passport filing requirements on a contract-by-contract basis, allow the City Chief Procurement Officer to grant a partial waiver of the requirements to supply specified information upon a determination that it is in the best interest of the city to award the contract to the contractor despite the inability to supply such information, and update the rule by replacing all references to Vendex, the city's prior procurement platform, with references to Passport, the current platform.
Connor, there is a member who wishes to make a statement or ask questions on the first item. Please do so now. Nata? Okay, thank you. There is another member who wish to make any other statement attending this meeting? If not, will a member please make a motion to move this item? Victor, thank you. Will another member please second the motion by move? Thank you, Wayne. Now I will ask each member of the Procurement Policy Board to vote on these items. All in favor? Good. Any opposed? Any abstention? Perfect. So let the record show that the item number 1 is adopted. The second item on the agenda is to vote on the adoption of changes to section 4-01 of the PPB rules. The public hearing was held on June 16, 2025. At this time, I recognize Jessica Liu, Agency Attorney at the Mayor's Office of Contract Services, to speak further on the rules on behalf of the administration. Jessica, please.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak before the PPB about these reforms to Section 4-01 of the PPB rules to clarify the criteria and exemptions for performance evaluations, to outline the agency's responsibilities after a performance evaluation, and to add a timeframe for the completion of agency performance evaluation. This amendment will require performance evaluations to be completed within 90 days after the anniversary of the contract start date.
Thank you, Jessica. If there is a member who wishes to make a statement or ask a question on this item, please do. Yes.
I have no issues with the amendments here. We voted them into CAPA, but as I think I said at the last meeting, I'm just going to use every opportunity I can to just restate that performance evaluations in the way that the PPB are currently written are not required for procurements done pursuant to the small purchase method. And while that might have been well intended when the small purchase threshold was just at $100,000, we have since collectively as a PPB amended and continue to amend the rules to also include that small purchase method, to include the MWBE small purchase method, which we very much support, but currently has a value of $1.5 million. And both for documenting good performance, excellent performance, which can only help to bolster a company's reputation with other city agencies so that the city does not continue to rely on the same MWBEs that it is using, and to be able to be transparent and provide greater public access to the fact that these MWBEs are doing great work, but also to document performance, even if it's not unsatisfactory, which is currently the only way that the rule is written. I continue to recommend that MOX reconsider bringing to the PPB an amendment that actually would allow and require performance evaluations for MWB small purchase procurements that exceed the intent of the small purchase rule, which is $100,000.
Noted, Charlie. All right. We have an addition or no?
I need to close the recording thing. X out of the recording box. Oh, okay.
Jacob, all right. We welcome Jacob to the meeting. Thank you, Charlotte. Noted. Is any other member who wish to make a statement or ask specific questions on this item? All right. Thank you. At this moment, I'd like to please to request a member of the PPB to make a motion to move this item. Charlotte, thank you. Will someone second the motion? Wayne, thank you so much. And then I will call for a vote. All in favor to adopt the second item, please say aye. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Perfectly. So let the record show that the item number 2 is adopted. The third item is to vote on the adoption of changes to various sections of the PPB rules. No public hearing was held as a previous proposed rule amendment. The PPB ruled in identical fashion. The public comments period ended on June 21st, 2025. At this time, recognize Calvary Haynes Troutman, fellow at the Mayor's Office of Contract Service, to speak further on the rules on behalf of the administration.
Thank you,
I'll
Chair,
go-
for the opportunity. Sorry. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak before PPB about changes to multiple other sections of the PPB rule. With the amendments to the New York Charter and PPB 2-11 relating to public hearing, notice, and comment, these amendments will update other provisions of the PPB rules to ensure consistency.
All right, thank you. There is a member who wishes to make a statement or ask a questions on this item. All right. If not, will a member please make a motion to move this item? Wayne, thank you. May I have a second? Thank you, Charlotte. Charlotte, sorry. Let me call for a vote. All in favor to adopt item number 3? Very good. Any opposed? Any abstention? Please the record show that the amendment number 3 is adopted. The remaining items on today's agenda are to vote on new proposed rule changes to be entered into the CAPA process. The potential form of these rule changes are included on the PPB webpage, with the understanding that this draft might change as they make their way through the CAPA process, including before obtaining preliminary certification, and will require subsequent votes by the Procurement Policy Board for adoption. The 4 items on the agenda are proposed changes to various sections of the PPB rules, especially the creation of a new section 3-17. At this time, I recognize Nick Negron, Agency Attorney at Max, to speak further on the rules on behalf of the administration. Nick, please.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak before the PPB about these reforms to the PPB rules. The proposed changes would update provisions of the PPB rules relating to the alternative project delivery method known as design build. Design build is one method of alternative project delivery in which one entity or a team of separate entities work under a single contract to provide design and construction services. Design build provides a streamlined method of contracting to promote efficiency in publicly funded projects. These proposed amendments would establish regulations relating to the design build alternative project delivery method, including creating a new PPB rule, section 3-17. This will allow the city to reduce costs and expedite public works project delivery while maintaining quality and compliance. The current PPB rules do not contemplate the New York State required multi-step process to procure design build services, and this proposed rule would detail the steps for such procurements for agencies authorized by the Public Works Investment Act to use design build.
Thank you, Nick. There is a member who wishes to make a statement or ask a question to Nick on this matter. All right.
I just want to say that on behalf of our office, we're really happy to see this proposed rule finally coming before the PPB to vote. The controller and I were invited by Mayor Adams's first deputy mayor, Lorraine Grillo, to sit on the Capital Process Reform Task Force. And as part of members of that task force, the controller and I were very vocal advocates. The controller and I went up to Albany numerous occasions, and he spoke with many legislators in support of alternative project delivery methods, of which this is one. And we have regularly met with agencies such as the New York City Department of Design and Construction, who has mostly been using the method, and definitely see the benefits in having an alternative project delivery method available when it is appropriate, because I think capital construction agencies do note that it is not always appropriate to use this method, and that there will be times that the traditional design bid build remains the most appropriate and cost-effective way to execute a capital project. So just happy that we are here. I do want to just point out that offering design build as an alternative project delivery method is not just about the procurement and the sourcing of the vendor, but it is also a significant change in contract administration. So as you can see, built within the rule is not just the two-step RFQ, RFP process that you can use qualitative factors, not just low bid in selecting the singular vendor, but there is also significant changes to the contract administration process. And for that, I want to let the public and my fellow PPB members know that members from and colleagues from our Office of General Counsel, as well as the city's chief engineer, which actually reports within the controller's office and is responsible for promulgating the various construction-related directives and having a dotted line to engineering audit officers at all agencies, worked closely with their colleagues at the New York City Law Department, who in many of the instances are the two entities that are primarily involved in addressing contract administration disputes and issues that come up between the city and the vendors. And so we're just happy to see that feedback was taken into consideration. I think that it is not a perfect rule, but given the fact that we need to sunset the use of the innovative procurement method, this is a great start. And the other thing that I'll just add to contract administration is a huge component to any capital construction project is the use of subcontractors. Historically, city agencies have been a little bit better, construction capital agencies, at approving and recording as required their subcontractors into city systems. It was formerly in a system called the Pay Information Portal, which lives in the city's financial management system. We agreed to allow that sunset so that it would be included in one city system, Passport. As part of that condition, Mox had indicated to us that there would be a functionality that previously didn't exist in PIP for agencies and contractors to enter multi-tier subcontractors into the system, which for projects that are being done by design build, which are typically more complicated and much larger, the chance that there will be multi-tier subcontractors and significant multi-tier subcontractor is much more exponential than it would be on a particular project. Tracking, approving, and making transparent the use of subcontractors is not only important for vendor integrity reasons, making sure that they have insurance, but is also a critical component to being able to ensure that the city is measuring and properly tracking the use of the prime vendors certified MWBEs on those projects. While Passport does have this functionality, we have seen it a very slow usage on the part of prime vendors who have been awarded design build contracts to be entering their subcontractor information, particularly those multi-tier subcontractors, and for contractors to be entering in their payment information. And so I just hope that Mox will continue to work with agencies on all contracts where there are multi-tier subcontractor activity, but in particular with design build, because right now, if you go into Passport and you want to check on the subcontractor utilization on these major design build contracts, you will not see that activity that the city otherwise boasts and claims that is there. And if we want to hold our agencies and our vendors accountable, it needs to be in the system that it is not only required to be in, but that oversight agencies have access to.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the efforts of you and the controller. Is any other member who would like to make any statement or questions on that issue? If not, will a member please make a motion to move this item? Thank you. May I request a member to please second the motion? Wayne, thank you. All in favor? Mr. Kappa, very good. No opposed. Okay, thank you, Molly. And no abstentions. Very good. I will now ask each member of the Procurement Policy Board vote on this item. Okay, done. I'm sorry. Let's record show that the item was voted and was adopted. The fifth item on this agenda, originally listed on the published agenda, has been tabled for future meetings. I'm sorry. The sixth and final item on the agenda is to vote on changes to various sections of the rules especially amending dash 3-16A8. 16.8, I'm sorry, 3-16. At this time, I recognize David, Deputy General Counsel at MOPS, to speak further on the rule on behalf of the administration. David?
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak before the board about these amendments to the PPB rules. These amendments serve two primary purposes. First, changes are being made to reflect the decommissioning of HHS Accelerator and the transfer of all HHS Accelerator procurement processes into Passport. Accordingly, amendments have been proposed to remove and replace references to HHS Accelerator and the HHS Accelerator Director throughout the PPB rules. We also believe that this rule package presents an opportunity to simplify existing PPB Rule 3-16, which repeats rule text that is already reflected in other sections of the PPB rules. Therefore, we propose replacing Rule 3-16 in its entirety with a summed-down rule that references to other applicable PPB rule sections as appropriate, along with other updates to ensure consistency. Second, the revised Rule 3-16 adds the time schedules pursuant to Local Law 169, enacted in 2023, which required MOCs to conduct a study on the timelines of the various steps of the procurement process for human services contracts, and requires the PPB to subsequently promulgate rules setting time schedules for these steps. Over the course of several months in 2024, MOCs studied data from Passport and engaged extensively with partners at all human service agencies to properly report on the procurement timelines. Based on this research, MOCs published a report in October 2024 outlining the main milestones in the procurement process and the time it takes for each step. The text in the proposed rule presented today reflects the timelines shared in this report. We believe that the proposed language achieves greater transparency in the procurement process, establishes benchmarks for future data analysis, and creates clear parameters to guide agencies. The intent for L169 is to provide our health and human service providers and agency partners with meaningful and realistic timelines for the contracting process. The time schedules we are proposing reflect actual data-driven achievable timelines, not idealized ones. The recommended time schedules take into consideration the reality that agencies still require significant time to procure most human service contracts. And we developed this proposed language not as a punitive measure, but as an opportunity to set expectations across government providers. We believe all parties will be able to use these additions to the PPB rules to better plan for major projects and procurements. Note also that the law requires annual reports, and through this, and as well as continuing conversations with stakeholders and our agency and city partners, we look to continue refining these timelines and rules. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to discuss these revisions to the PPB rules that we believe will benefit the health and human services provider community.
Thank you, David. If there is a member who wishes to make a statement or ask a question on this item.
Sure. Yeah. I'd just like to start by saying that, I'm in support of the proposed rule. The vast majority of it, as council indicated, is really just reflecting the sunsetting of Human Services Accelerator and having most of that functionality now live in Passport. And then the remaining changes are tied to the timeline. I do think, however, that for the record and for the fellow PPB members, it's important for us to all understand what we are and are not accomplishing by voting this rule into CAPA and then ultimately having it promulgated into the procurement rules, also with the understanding that we have been put in a position where, because of a deadline included in Local Law 169 of 2023, we have no choice but to vote into CAPA and then promulgate the proposed procurement rule in front of us. I'll start with just quickly the sunsetting of HHS Accelerator and the transition of the functionality into Passport. By recognizing that any system transition is a difficult one. I think human service providers and agencies were long accustomed to HHS Accelerator, both as a sourcing tool for human service projects, as well as the financials component of it. Our office, I'll be transparent, are not involved in the day-to-day budgeting, invoice, payment processes on any contracts, including human service contracts. But we are constantly hearing, whether it's through escalations from human service providers, umbrella organizations that represent human service providers, or our engagement in various policy situations that separate and apart from the registration of contracts, which I'll get to when I talk about the changes related to procurement timelines, that there is an increased difficulty in actually getting paid. You can imagine that that is even a larger problem when you're compounding it on top of retroactive payments. So I just want to acknowledge that system changes are difficult. I believe that MOX hopefully continues to add resources to improve whatever system issues there are, as well as to continue to be able to provide support to not just the providers, but to agencies to help to remedy the issues with paying invoices, approving budgets, which is a separate issue, even after providers long wait for a contract to be registered. Moving on to the section at the end of the rule that speaks to human service procurement timelines. Contract retroactivity continues to be a real challenge for nonprofits that are doing business with the city. We continue to support all measures to address the issues causing these lengthy timelines for nonprofits and celebrate even small progresses. As a reminder, our office at the start of both the mayoral and controller administrations issued a report stemming from a joint task force with many recommendations tied to helping to improve this process. However, these PPB rules that we are voting today to move into CAPA will not bring the substantial system changes to truly fix the issues, which was the intent of that joint task force, as well as the local law that was presented by the council. In the meantime, despite Band-Aid fixes like the Clear the Backlog initiative from a couple of years before and these proposed rules, nonprofits will continue to struggle. In November of last year, our office sent a letter to this PPB and MOX under the prior CHIPO with our opinions on the findings of the October 2024 preliminary report that council mentioned. Our office raised several deficiencies within the timeframes proposed nearly a year ago. In short, the milestone steps are overbroad and do not offer enough detail. The timeframes only apply to human service RFPs and don't meet the requirements of the local law. And MOX did not share any data or methodologies to support its timeframes, and therefore the basis for the timeframes remain unclear. MOX did not address any of our concerns. At an April 30th, 2024 council hearing, Councilmember Stevens, during a contracts and during hearing on contracts and children and youth, referenced our letter regarding the preliminary local law 169 of 2023 report. She indicated that she had hoped, as we had, not just as the controller's office, but as a member of this PPB, to see a more comprehensive information and that our office's concerns had been addressed before any rules were promulgated. And that remains to not have happened. The timeframes in this draft rule are longer than how long agencies are currently taking to release RFPs on average, and that was actually substantiated by the report that MOX issued. This apparent conclusion that the city's current processing timelines for RFPs only, since that is the only thing that the report addressed and the only thing that the rule in front of us is addressing, are acceptable, runs counter to the experience of countless nonprofits and human service providers that are struggling today because of contract payment delays. It is Nonprofit Week, and the mayor's office recently issued statements celebrating its pre-processing numbers. Though it is good and right to celebrate improvements when they do happen, a closer look at these numbers reveals a slightly different picture. Though MOX stated that 88% of fiscal year 26 human service contracts were submitted for registration on time, only 429 of those targeted 884 contracts, about only 50%, were submitted to our office by June 1st, which would be required to allow for the 30-day review period that is mandated by the New York City Charter for our office, the only part of the procurement process that has a mandated time frame. Despite this 30-day review time, during this year's pre-processing, our office, concerting efforts and trying to be as efficient as we can, completed its review and registration of these pre-processing items in just 13 days on average. Furthermore, nearly half of these target registrations were actually negotiated acquisition extensions issued by the Department of Youth and Community Development. A few weeks ago, our office published a report that takes a specialized look at what these negotiated acquisition extensions, NAEs, are. The report discovered that the city uses NAEs disproportionately in the human service sector, accounting for 87% of the registered NAE contracts since 2010, something that we also mentioned in our letter in response to the Local Law 169 MOX report, since it did not look at timelines for any procurement method, including NAEs, besides the RFP process. The city extending contracts longer and longer through negotiated acquisition extensions clearly exploits a tool meant only to be used in the PPB roles as a last resort. These NAEs kick the can further down the road to avoid properly updating contract terms and conditions for vendors, leading to outdated approaches to fulfilling services and worsening bureaucratic delays. Were it not for the fact that DYCD hadn't issued an RFP in years, it would not have had over 400 of these NAEs to have to implement in the procurement process this year. The most responsible, least corruption-prone avenue for contracts is to reopen competitive bidding in an efficient time frame, rather than nonprofits and service providers working on outdated terms and have been overextended to provide convenient continuity for an agency. I'm glad to see that the local law requires annual reports, and I hope that those annual reports, including with the sharing of transparent data that will hold the city accountable to these timeframes, will allow for more meaningful procurement changes to be presented to this board in the future. I have copies of the letter that we had shared previously, as well as our negotiated acquisition extension report to share with my fellow PPB members here, and Molly, happy to email those to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make
David, yep.
a statement? So we do thank the Comptroller's Office for their continuous oversight and review and of the reports and the procurement methods and such. Do want to make a few notes regarding some of the Comptroller's statements and sort of the intent and methodology of the report. So the purpose of the report was to be a representative report on the timing and duration of the procurement processes. The report is not meant to be a comprehensive overview of the timelines for all possible procurement methods for human services. For the purposes of the report, it defined covered contracts as RFPs because RFPs were a representative sample based on the FY23 data. As you recall, the report was released in 2024, where RFPs covered more than 50% of the contract value, and because they represent the most complex procurement methods. The methodology used is identical to the one used in the indicator cycle time report. I'd like to further note that the report is meant to be an evaluation of the time needed for an agency or vendor to complete each step. As part of the evaluation, MOX reviewed retroactivity rates and incorporated that data into the report and considered best practices. The recommended time schedules take into consideration the reality that agencies still require months to register competitive procurements. The goal is to have agencies use this so they can plan their procurements in advance to align with their expected cycle timeline. And finally, while this report is intended to help improve timely registration, and these rules are to help improve timely registration cycle times for future fiscal years, it is overly broad to place a number of other longstanding challenges, including on-time registration, which the city and MOX has been partnering with the Comptroller's Office to address since the start of this administration and prior. That being said, the methodology to count submissions to the Comptroller's Office before July 1st as the on-time annual HSS timely registration initiative and the prompt payment report predates this administration. In addition to adhering to the previous methodology, This measure allows us to focus on the part of the process that is most relevant to the agencies we oversee. Again, we thank the Comptroller's Office for their partnership and being open to continuous dialogues as we continue to work together to improve the procurement process for our health and human service providers.
Okay. If there is another member or anyone from the PPB who wish to ask another question or a statement on this matter,
Yes, just very briefly.
Victor?
I'd just like to note that I fully agree with the comments of my colleague, Charlotte Manjan. I think she summed it up well. I don't have anything additional to add, but I fully support the position that she raised.
Very good. Thank you. Noted. Is any other member who wish to make a statement on this matter? All right. If not, will a member of the PPB make a motion to adopt this item? Wayne, all right. May I request someone to second this motion? Okay, shall I think of Charlotte? Sorry. All right, all in favor, please vote ayes. Okay, any abstentions? Any oppositions? Lovely. Please note, noted that this item was adopted and the comments will be taken into consideration to enhance and to improve the process as we move forward. I will now, at this moment, to any member who would like to make any other statement on this issue? No? All right. I think the record showed it was adopted, and that will basically complete our agenda. Just want to wish everyone the last few days of the summer season. Hopefully we'll get better, not today, but Friday and Saturday will be lovely, I believe. And please be safe and be healthy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Thanks a lot, everybody.